NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever. So if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go. Back in the can for another edition of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void. And I always say that they're special, but this one is because, man, there's a story to tell here, and I'm not going to take away any time. Who the fuck are you, and what do you do?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Nick Batsch again. It's been a long time since I've been on the Lunatic Fringe. It's awesome to be back.
Awesome.
Looking forward to talking a little bit about my journey, where I came from, what's been going on in my life, and then skydiving in general, all the good stuff.
I mean, it's been a hell of a journey, even just watching it from the outside. And as I told you pre-podcast, I watched the Nationals pretty closely because I had friends competing and all you guys competing, and watching you ending up on the top of the podium, knowing even just a little bit of your story was really fucking inspiring, which is why I want you to tell your story, and I'm just going to sit here and shut up and be a fan and listen. So if you can tell people why this is so impressive and how you ended up with an uphill battle over the last couple of years to end up back on that podium, I want to hear all about it.
Sure. We can kind of dive down that rabbit hole a bit. It really comes down to, looking for yourself, finding what you want in life, and then waiting for the right opportunity to let it present itself for you to be able to make that leap or figure out whether you can do something again.
Sure.
I was in an accident in 2018. My teammate and I, we were training up in the middle of a good season. World Championships just ended in Poland, just did the swoop freestyle in San Diego, or not San Diego, in Copenhagen. Was getting ready for San Diego and that two-way comp that PD was going to throw down in 2018. And then my friend came in town to Colorado, and he hadn't jumped out there in quite a while. And I had just gotten in on an international flight. Just a large braidment of a lot of things coming together to cause an accident, as usual. You know, it's never that one thing that made you get hurt.
Sure.
So, you know, between him not jumping there in 6 years and me coming off an international flight, haven't done two ways with him very much. And then was just gung-ho to get him first thing in the morning. Let's get on that airplane. Didn't even have memory cards in my GoPros because I had just handed off the video files to the crew over at Swoop Freestyle. So, you know, just the level of preparedness was not really there. Decided to go up on the first jump, follow him in instead of just doing some solos or, you know, backing off and taking it easy. And I got too close to him in the turn out here in Colorado, or out there in Colorado. I was, you know, we're diving nowadays. We're diving at about 100 miles per hour vertical, which is usually in the range of 150 feet per second closing speeds. And I just held off like a second probably on the backside of my turn to keep from being too close to him in the snap. And then, and when I finished my snap and I looked at the ground for the first time, I found myself about 40 or 50% of the altitude that I needed of the 300 feet is gone. And I didn't really recognize the sight picture right away. You know, it's the first time I looked at the ground since the beginning of the turn. You know, I'm watching my buddy, I'm flying his turn. And then all of a sudden there's this picture I don't normally recognize. Sure. And I see him out like 50 or 70 yards in front of me, maybe about 70 meters above me still, you know, something of that nature. And I'm going like, why is he out there? You know, and then the next mental thought was like, okay, you're going in. Like but it took a second to process because I didn't have that clear picture the whole time. I wasn't looking at the ground myself. Sure. During that two-way. So for me, it was kind of like an awkward surprise. And then you take the reaction time of the human to respond to something of that nature. I was probably only like 100 feet from the ground or so when I stabbed the brakes on my canopy, but at that wing loading, that speed, that altitude recovery, there's not much left, you know, to her at that point. So right. I ended up almost getting it out of the dive. You know, it would have, I wish I would have hit harder. And I know that sounds completely crazy. But at the end of the day, the reason I wish I would have hit harder was because the deflection of the water would have been different, you know. Sure. Instead of just going into the water and then skipping off the water and then landing a little bit later, I barely caught my knees and it flipped me upside down the harness. And that unloaded the canopy extremely quickly. Sure. And I was probably, my mental picture, what I saw behind me was the ground was behind me and I'm upside down in the harness and I'm probably 30, 40 feet in the air already. So I have the toggles in my hands, you know, that's what I use to save myself. I pulled them down as hard as I could. And I kind of like, you know, that sensation, if you've ever boogie board or surfed and you're about to take a big wave and then you decide like, oh, I'm not going to do it. And you pull off the back of the top, right, the last second. It's kind of what it felt like. You know, I was like pushing myself back in my harness, everything I have. And when I was sat back up in the harness, I was probably 60 feet in the air. Oof. And I was like heading off the pond at a 45-degree angle. And the canopy was clearly in a shudder of a high-speed stall. It was not performing to a very, very efficient manner. So I'm in the toggles and I'm kind of like feeling her out, and it feels like when we're stalling them into the accuracy pit, you know, there's not much left in her. You've already used enough to get up and like you're just kind of placing yourself for the landing. Sure. And it starts coming down. So I start flying the stall. And I flew that canopy until I stood it up on the side of the pond. And the only thing I could think of going into the impact was was that I needed to save my back and my neck and my body, because I knew I've hit the ground hard enough. I'd broken my ankle in Dubai, speed flying up in the mountains there. I know what it's like to go into something at a high rate of speed that's going to, injure you. And that was that picture. That side picture said, you're in trouble.
Sure.
So yeah, I stood it up and it blew out my left leg completely. That was the left side of the pond. So it was kind of like on the edge of the water.
Right.
So one of my legs, my left leg went down more than my right leg, and it had to have twisted somewhat. So the tib fib, it compound fractured out the shin, and then the leg twisted from the tib fib breaking, and that's what broke the femur at the hip.
Oof.
And then, yeah, it was really bad. And so even with that stand up, I still broke my nose on the ground. That's how hard the impact was. So it was tib fib. And then once that gave away and then knee couldn't, the leg couldn't support that angle, then the hip gave out, not the hip, but the femur at the hip right there at the femur head. Yeah. So it was pretty traumatic. I was pretty shaken up. I wasn't even sure if I was okay or not to walk around, because you're way adrenaline out at the moment. You can't even, I didn't even know my leg was broken. I had a pin, the hip pinched, like there was a pain there. And then but the lower leg, I couldn't even feel what was going on there.
Wow.
And my friend asked me, it's like, do you need an ambulance? And I went to pull my leg out from my other leg, and to find that it was wrapped around my right leg. And I didn't even know that. So the shin was kind of like broken in half around the other shin. Sort of the way I was laying. Yeah. So that was pretty dramatic for her, because she would, the blood had squirt, and that was all good. It was very, very, it turned real fast, like, oh, okay. Yeah. I do need an ambulance. I was lucky.
I was just going to ask, you seem to have such a clear picture of what happened, but most of the time you talk to people that were in an accident like that, and their memories are spotty at best. But obviously some of this was pretty slowed down for you, especially considering you're 60 feet up and it's stalling out. But do you attribute your recall of this just from how many times you've swooped and how much this one stood out as unusual?
I'm not sure what threw it down exactly for me. I've always noticed, like, in a moment of fear or pain or something that's happening to me, like in my life, that I would find a way to overcome that pain. And I think like talking about the injury or like walking through it is like what really helped me remember it, because while the guys from the emergency were taking care of my leg and getting me all bandaged up to take to the hospital, they were asking me how I did it, or what, and it's kind of funny from a point of view from my wife, because she came a few minutes later. She was already on her way to the facility, luckily. And she arrives, and I'm explaining to the technicians how to swoop. So that's pretty funny. Because it wasn't even like, oh yeah, I was more or less just trying to explain how I got hurt so they could understand the implications of the injury.
Sure.
It was a little retarded, but I it was weird, man. I didn't have any pain until after probably I started driving in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. A lot of it was so adrenaline filled, and I was conscious for the whole thing. I didn't have a head injury. So I was very lucky with that, because we've had some friends get head injuries with much less impacts that have made them less than what they were originally. So I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate, but I knew that going into it, man. And I preach it to my students that I teach. But man, you fly that shit until it's done, dusted, laid across the ground, and it has footprints on it. Like whatever it takes, you gotta fly that canopy until it's done flying. Because even though you're done flying and you just wrecked, like it's a machine, man. Those things they're amazing nowadays compared to what they used to be. And they used to collapse, and we used to flip through the water quite viciously, but now they don't collapse. If there's not a line implication that causes the lines to disrupt with something, pulling on one real hard, then you've got a pretty even inflation. I must have hit real even in the harness, because it just kind of flipped me upside down and sailed.
Wow.
So it was a little dramatic for what I thought was going to be a little bit like an exciting two-way, turned into a real real freaking crazy in the ground moment.
Right.
For sure, man.
Now, when did the reality
dude.
set in? Because I mean, I've been in accidents not quite as extreme as that, but I've definitely fucked myself up, and it sometimes takes a while for it to soak in. But did it start hitting you in the ambulance, or was it in the hospital that you're like, oh fuck?
No, the real big thing for me, the hardest thing was that when I was there and we were on the ground, like with my leg all messed up, all the thoughts that kept going through my head was, you just lost your career. Oof. And because at the end of the day, I mean, like I was going to live, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't a life or death situation. Now, whether I was going to walk the same again or whether I was going to be able to use my leg the way again, that was a different thought process.
Right.
That was in the back of my head too. But the ultimate thing was, like, I had just came off as you know, because we've talked, I was at a career high when this all went down. Like I had won 4 world championship titles in a row. There had been, amazing accomplishments on many fronts for most competitions. I was in the top placings, and I knew where I was physically and mentally. To lose all that when I was just figured it all out, like for a few years, I'd been competing since 2006.
Right.
So for me, it was like, man, like you just got this thing figured out after 12 years and now you just did this to yourself. Yeah, that was more the mental side of it. For sure.
Was it harder knowing that?
Because I could just see them all.
Was it harder knowing that it was just basically a fun jump with a buddy than had it been like training for a competition?
Well, it was training for a 2-way competition that PD was holding, but that doesn't mean anything to me. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean that on a scale of like, oh, it's not important, but like, let's be honest, it's more for fun.
Sure.
Whereas like with the normal competition, when you're flying by yourself, you're doing your own thing, you're flying. That's me flying me.
Right.
So it was extremely frustrating for me because had I not indulged completely in the sense of doing a 2-way, which I think is really fun and cool, don't get me wrong, but was it worth it for me personally? No. I mean, like I've had so many close calls in 2-ways, I can't even tell you all of them. Some of them are ridiculous, and it for what, I mean, for a competition that doesn't really judge anything but what 2 people are able to perform together at our level of sport, it's not really well recognized.
Sure.
If you're an Olympic diver doing 2-ways with a teammate for an Olympic medal, totally worth it. Yeah, I get it. But
sure.
Like for our sport, the 2-way comps are just for fun.
Sure.
Like you said. So it did hurt to know that I got busted up doing something that wasn't really career goal oriented.
Now, when you were at the level that you were going into all this prior to the accident, because you trained so hard, because you were on top of your game, was there any point at which you thought, I'm not going to end up in that situation because I've got what I need to keep myself from, getting in the corner like that?
That's a hard question. I've been down that road. In 2011, after I had won my first world championship title, I ended up hurting myself quite badly in Z Hills under 62 Petra when they weren't even out yet. This was under a prototype, and I just couldn't get out of the dive. And it seemed, it's weird when they seem perfect, but then it doesn't work. Like it felt like the most powerful swoop ever, you know what I mean? Like, and the rears were just, everything was loaded and I feel power. And then all of a sudden it's like, this isn't working. You're not recovering. Oh shit. And it, like we talked about earlier, 150 feet a second closing speed at 100 miles per hour. And we're transferring from vertical on average, like 99. In Arizona, I was averaging 99.8 miles per hour on my snap at about 310 feet from the ground. And then we transfer horizontally into the 85 to 90 miles an hour, if you're lucky, range of horizontal speed, usually in the 70s, because the inefficiency of the harnesses and just our flying techniques. So like, yeah, I mean, like in that moment of like, there's a lot happening for a very short, like, you've got a half a second to make a life-changing decision. And it's one of those things I teach my students is you what people need to realize is that if you're flying a 58 or 57-foot canopy and you stab the brakes completely on that parachute, you're going to get like 3 or 4 inches of tail deflection, maybe, before the canopy is going to start to go into a high-speed stall. So there's really not much deflection of air to save your life in the terms of like stabbing out.
Sure.
And what I like to teach like my students, which a lot of people don't understand, is that when you're in a steep dive and your canopy's parallel to the ground with you, and then you hit the brakes really hard, it's not that the canopy's creating 100% lift that's saving your life necessarily. The lift is being generated, but it's horizontal and it's not traveling vertically to the ground like a Harrier jet. Right. It's actually that the parachute's increasing the drag ratio of the brakes per the size of the wing versus the drag it had in its linear shape. And then when you do that, you're connected by strings. So it goes up, you come down. Right. It saves your life faster. I mean, that's the basic physics about what's happening. So if you're under a really small wing that has the same drag coefficient and aspect of your body size, because we're getting to that size wing versus body size thing. Sure. Then you can actually, it's really hard to save your life if you decide to do that too low or too late, because there's not much drag coefficient difference. And in fact, when we're stabbing out the brakes, we're usually getting bigger in our body position too. Sure. And it causes us to almost stay in a dive even longer, because you're changing the drag on 2 objects now, and it's not as efficient. So right. My best advice is get as small as possible, stab out as deep as possible, and, hold on to the strings as hard as you can, because they get a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, man. Now, after the big accident, you've obviously gone to the hospital and the doctors are starting to give their assessments, and you've done the x-rays and I'm guessing MRIs, and they're checking everything out. When did you start to get or were there any really heavy predictions from the doctors about usability and how good your leg's going to be when it's all said and done?
Well, we're having, you're getting pretty deep into it. And these are great questions. My teammate Jay was in the room, and my wife, who's at the time was a surgical trauma nurse, was also in the operating room when they were trying to set my lower leg to get the bone back in. And so that was a really traumatic moment, because I was they couldn't get my leg set. They couldn't save the bone. There was a chunk missing, and they were trying to put the chunks back into my leg so that like the leg could be put into an X-fixator for 3 weeks until the swelling goes down enough to do the surgery. And so they couldn't get it to set. And so I was awake, even though they had me on medicine during that. And then, so when I came to somewhat, I told the doctor, I said, you have to put me under more than that. Like, I felt everything. I saw everything that was happening. Wow. Is not okay. Because what was happening was they couldn't get enough traction to pull the lower leg far enough out from the compaction to get the bone to actually go back into the leg. So they were talking about having to surgically remove the bones. Right. And then freeze them and then put them back in later, possibly. So it was going to get really complicated. And so during that whole operation, like it took the third doctor, it took a larger male doctor to get my lower leg in, but I had fears that I wasn't going to be able to walk correctly, or at all. There was a lot going on emotionally at that point.
I mean, my concern at that point, especially with as hardcore as you're talking about, would be, my head would have gone instantly to, am I going to keep this leg? For fuck's sake, man, that's hardcore.
Yeah, that's where it was. Yeah. Yeah, they had to start giving me infusions with blood and stuff, because it was getting pretty traumatic with the amount of blood I was losing during the operation trying to get the leg saved. Sure. So it was real, I mean, and it's real when your wife, who's a surgical trauma nurse, is kind of like wanting to leave the room because it's you, not just another patient. There's, she can handle that kind of stuff, and it was still pretty gory from what I remember from the description that my teammates given me. So that was traumatic, man. Like I didn't even know. And then, and then they got the lower leg fixed, and I got in the recovery room, and my birthday present to myself was a femur rod the next day on my birthday. So September 3rd was the accident. September 4th on my birthday, they gave me a femur rod up in the hip, and that was pretty, it actually felt better. The instant they put it back together, it didn't hurt as bad. Yeah, it was weird. And then I wasn't able to walk for about three to 4 months and I couldn't use a knee scooter either because the femur break.
Wow.
So it was all crutches for about 3 to 4 months. Yeah. So,
Man, I mean, that's some,
pretty
I
great.
mean, seriously, that's as intense as they get when it comes to trying to have a recoverable injury. And I mean, you don't have to go too deep into it, but I mean, that is like an absolute perfect recipe for serious PTSD, which is why I was so impressed, you know, that to go through this and to know only a little bit of how bad that was, but even now to know so much more. How the fuck when did you go, you know, something, I'm going to get back in the saddle, or did it take time?
Yeah, you know, like we had a lot of family stuff going on. With right after my accident, it wasn't just about me. There was a lot of financial situations with my wife going back to school for a CRNA and my insurance programs with pre-existing injuries, and her quitting her job so that she could go back to school. So there was a lot of financial hardship to keep me on insurance. We were paying Cobra.
Oh, wow.
And it was more than most people's mortgages per month just to keep my insurance.
Wow.
And so we didn't set me forward. Like I didn't plan on skydiving for a long time because it was going to be too much. So we switched insurance, and then I didn't jump I could have jumped as of like 14 months after the accident. And then I didn't end up jumping till almost 2 years, 8 months later.
Wow.
Once she finished was finishing school again, and then new insurance and stuff like that. So I actually did my first jump back. I think it was sometime, honestly, I didn't keep track that much. It was like, I did 2 or 3 jumps in like April. And then I pulled back out of jumping again because of health related issues for myself and concerns. So I had been diagnosed with some illnesses that had taken a front step on our family's agenda for a while now.
Okay.
So then dealing with those for the last year or so, and then decided that if I wanted to do this whole competition thing, I would have to do it now. Because the U.S. Nationals is happening. And if you don't go now, you don't get to make the team for next year. And I've been through that many years in a row. And also kept me off the team for South Africa because I wasn't able to compete in 18. Wasn't able to compete in 19.
Sure.
So there's quite a few U.S. teams I missed the opportunity to compete for. So when all that went down, and then I was invited because of the World Championships didn't end with freestyle completing. So they used the rankings from the 2018 World Championships for the World Games meet. And I got an invite from Cornelia, and XC called me on the phone from when they were over in Russia, in Siberia, and asked me if I wanted to take a slot for the World Games. So it got put on the spot a little bit there, but you know, it didn't take me more than about 0.5 of a second to say yes. Because I had wanted to go compete at that world meet also since the last one in 2017. Sure. In Poland. So I'm just really excited because I was like, all right, I'm going to do the World Games again. I was able to do 3 of those in my career, which is once every 4 years. It's a long stint. And sure. I was able, you know, so I was like, if there's not many athletes, I think, or if there are any in canopy piloting who have gone to all 4 World Game events, sure, or have gone to 4 or more. So I was like, listen, I got to try this out. Like, this must be meant to be. So I took the invite, and then I told him, I said, listen, like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to respectfully try to figure out if I want to do this before I just show up, you know, and that's out of respect for other competitors, because the slots for that event to me is the most coveted venue of any venue. It's like our Olympics. Sure. It happens once every 4 years. And, you know, like, so if I was going to take a slot and I didn't really care about the sport or wanted to do it, to me, that was just being a little bit too selfish. So, sure. So I started jumping pretty hardcore on September 15th. I went out to the drop zone, got my paperwork signed up. I had my reserves still repacked from when I did jumps earlier in the year. And I just bought a 10 jump package and said, let's see how this goes. And then bought another 10 jump package, and then bought another. it kind of went like that. I was out there every day.
Sure.
And training, did 135 jumps in about 35 days.
Wow.
And I hadn't jumped in over 3 years and almost 2 months.
Man, oh man. Now, was there well, there had to have been obviously some conversation, but was there an intense conversation with your wife about, this is what I want to do? Was she supportive? Was she standoffish? I mean, that's got to be a tough spot for her too, especially seeing everything that she saw you go through.
Yeah. It had been a long time coming with the conversation. We'd been back and forth about whether or not I would want to do it again, or whether she would want me to do it again. And what I really waited for is the craziest part. I just waited for her to tell me she wanted me to be happy skydiving again.
That's awesome.
I didn't push it on her. I just waited until I saw a response from her on a level of like, she actually wants me to do something for it, not just for myself, and you've been with someone for a long time, how you can read people. And I mean, when something's genuinely, they want you to do it because they want you to do it, or they're just saying that because they want you to be happy.
Right.
There's a difference. And so, yeah, I just waited for that one, for her to say she wanted me to be happy and go back and start jumping again, if that's something I wanted to do. And then so when I got her blessing, then I just took it as that. And I started making mental plans to want to compete. But there was such a huge mental block over the possibility of what can my legs sustain again?
Sure.
In terms of landings, can I even compete at a level that is what I would consider worthy of going to put all this money and time and effort and to go do what I've done before? Like, can I sustain? Will I just blow up my leg and cost my family another, hundreds of thousands of medical bills again, or what might happen? So I didn't really know what to believe, in pursuing those goals.
Sure.
I obviously wanted to win the U.S. Nationals. There's no other reason why I would show up other than that purpose.
Sure.
I'm not a just go for it and try to do something kind of guy.
Right.
I don't do well with letting myself down in different areas. And so this was a huge mental barrier for me to cross, which I've done a lot of things before that have required mental acuteness and ability to overcome like previous things that have happened in life. But this by far was the biggest mental cake I've ever been down in terms of trying to figure out who you are as a human. What can you do? Like what is physically possible? Well,
that's the thing, right? I mean,
make that many jumps.
It really is a who am I kind of question. I mean, fundamentally, you come through something like that, where your entire life and your entire world and vision of it is turned upside down, literally in a tenth of a second. And now you're faced with a whole bunch of, oh shit, what now questions, man. That's tough to just walk away from. That lasts.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure on myself. Like I was saying, I'm really hard on myself. So it was one of those, like, I had to learn how to pop it up and start to trust my leg and accuracy. And then, if you ask Aaron and a couple of the other grounds people out there that were watching me pound myself into the ground for a month straight there before nationals, I mean, I took the beating. I went out there and I destroyed myself every day, trying to learn to trust the legs and build the muscle back. And I couldn't build the muscle in a month. There's no way. Like I lost an inch of my legs and an inch and a half out of my buttocks from just not getting back into the scene and wearing weights and doing jumps. And, so I didn't have that leg strength. And man, I pounded my face into the ground so many times trying to stand up accuracy and learn to trust the leg. But when do I give out? When do I let it go so I don't break it again? There was I did about 65 accuracy jumps, and most of them were not stand-up landings. Trying to learn to stand up again, trusting it. So that was a huge mental thing. But like you said, the PTSD thing, even right after the accident, I went scuba diving, and then I freaked out. I was 60 feet down right after I got down to the bottom, and I lost my regulator, and I couldn't find my backup regulator, and my wife wasn't right there. And then like I went back into like, you know, like that, like I got masks on, I'm in the hospital mode thing.
Right.
I don't know. It was weird. And it tripped me out, man. I decompressed and I blew out all my air and I surfaced, you know.
Wow.
And I mean, and then the scuba rep dude is like, you sure you can go down again? And, you know, like he's like trying to push me to go down. So I ended up going back down on the same tank, like right then, and then pushed through the rest of the whole scuba dive. But that was a crazy mental scuba dive, because I was like all in my own head the whole time, man.
Well, and that's the thing, like, right? That's the hardest fucking battle. That's the hardest battle, is fighting your own head and trying to get around these. I mean, especially considering you're having PTSD on a scuba dive about a skydive. It's not fucking logical. It comes out of left field, and holy shit, man. It's almost everything you can do just to hang on.
Yeah, it was like, and you know, the fact that I was 60 feet down and it was a life or death situation. And maybe it was the fact that it was the first time that I've been put into a life or death situation again since the accident. You know, like whatever psychologically was going on, it wasn't okay, you know, like clearly. But shit like that, you know, like having to push through that. And then, you know, the mental side of like coming down the road from that, the PTSD and the jumping, you know, like, you know, trusting the brakes, learning to dive the parachute, like feeling, and we got buffety air out here in Arizona. It's not the cleanest air, you know, like, so there's a lot of woofo issues going on for that month. I'll tell you what, everything from like the parachute feels small to this rig is loose on my body, you know, because you're just not used to doing sports again. I was working 9 to 5 and taking care of, you know, the apartment or whatever we're living in at the time, traveling around the country, doing school with my wife. And I mean, life was different for 3 years. So, kind of strange to get back in and then try to find yourself mentally. Also, like I constantly run back into like, oh, you used to do that all the time, you know, like, cause I've just, when you have an accident that I had, and you don't know if you'll ever do something again, you have to do your damn hardest and try to learn to mentally disconnect what your life used to be to what your life is now. And what you used to do to what you do now, because everything's changed. And in order for you to be happy, you've got to find some sort of happiness in what you're doing. Otherwise you'll go insane. You'll lose it. So, you know, for me, I washed all that away on purpose. Like, and even though like I was getting, you know, like competition mantra and all this stuff comes back to you, it doesn't mean that I sat there and thought about swooping and flying parachutes and like how I would do things differently for myself once the whole time that I was hurt. Cause I had learned to not think about that stuff. The only time I would think about it was when I'm fixing my students' turns or working with my students. But then I would be like a normal life outside of that you're not a skydiver. You're just doing normal things. So it was really, really interesting to step back into those shoes and then have to relearn everything that you used to do. Originally you just did it, but now you have to think about doing it. It's not second nature anymore. You're having to force yourself into those shoes. Now, when you finally made the decision and now you're there, competition's getting ready, was it on the first jump, I'm mentally there, I'm back, or was it a continuous a new adjustment even through the competition? It was a constant new adjustment. You know, like the FLCPA was a huge awakening for me. I got my ass kicked by a whole bunch of people. I took third overall, which I wouldn't say a whole bunch, but I'm telling you, like, these guys were all coming with bigger guns and better weapons than I've ever flown. And, you know, you watch all these mutant harnesses 4 or 5 years ago that didn't make a score. Now they're getting dialed in, you know, after flying it for this long, people are starting to hit scores really well. So, you know, it's hard to keep up with coming back into the game with like borrowed parachutes. Cause I had one, since I sold most of my stuff, borrowed rigs. And then on top of all that, just trying to figure out how to fly. I'm 7 kilos lighter than I used to be. So everything's different. It was a real trip. It was kind of crazy to, you know, like, all right, can I do this? And like I said, I was calling on friends and I tore a 75 in practice doing a wing over, and I had to call on another friend to send me my old 75. And I'm just lucky I have some friends, because almost every parachute I was flying during the practice month and during the FLCPA was someone else's parachute.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's nice. It's nice to have friends that still have all your canopies, that you once flew.
Dude.
I'll tell you that much. But it was weird. It's a trip, but also just the seeing everybody again, like the whole, like all the new faces with the old faces mixed in. And then like, you're trying to, like I was saying, it was a different game, like, I'm like, all right, I bit off more than I can chew on this one for sure. But then I started remembering that like, it's 9 rounds and like, it's 9 rounds of very pressureful flying for a lot of teams, that it's not just going and throwing a run and who cares. Like,
right.
Even my flying was more aggressive, and my distances suffered for my water touches because everything was just so rough, because I got to get this part done,
right.
like, or I don't make a team. There's a lot of pressure on this competition in particular, that maybe it's weird, but maybe you wouldn't even see the same pressure at the world meet because you're already at the world meet.
Sure.
What I mean? You're not trying to get there still.
Sure. Yeah. You're there. You've made it.
Yeah, you're already on the team. Like, all you have to do is score 9 runs and do well, like, but in the US thing, I've scored a few zeros before in 2016 and didn't make the US team. Like, had just won the world championships 2015, didn't make the team 2016 with the mistakes.
Sure.
Like, that's crazy, but it happened. You might wake up with a migraine. You can't change a competition date just because you're sick.
Sure.
There's issues with that too. With like a lot of people, you get to a certain point, like, you want to compete, but does your body want you to compete? Like,
right.
Does your neck, like, no. I could tell you after 145 jumps in a month, like, I am whip my ass into shape, but man, I'm hurting still,
Sure.
and I haven't jumped in 4 days. I'm still sore. So,
man.
Yeah,
well,
man. It's been a journey. So
it strikes me as even more impressive because you were going into it not just with the changes physically and the different wing loading and borrowed gear and stuff, but the change in mentality, because that, if you ask me, especially for CP, is the most important part, is that mental sharpness and accuracy and knowing I've got this. This is what I do. This is how it feels. And you went into it, I don't want to say as a rookie, but feeling like you were starting over again, which to me is insane that you would even score, let alone end up on the top of the podium.
Yeah, there was a lot of training that went down, and that helped a lot. But even like you were saying, going into the competition, there was moments in the comp where I'm just like, this isn't how you fly. But there was, what stood out more than that was like the moment that like I flew like I do fly, like, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I scored 100 in accuracy. I'm like, oh, where'd that come from? I've been waiting, like the 91, the round before, like my foot's on the tape, but I'm almost in the box. And then the third round, I had to pop like 25 feet in the air because the winds died and I had too much weight on, too much power, and ended up setting down in the box. But I had to, I collapsed under the, like, I kind of like, I stood it up, but then like my balance went off, and then it was just like put my hand down to, keep my face from smacking the peas. But for the most part, like there's those moments where you're flying and you feel like you've always felt. You forget about your injuries. You forget about what limitations you might have. But that's also a scary thing, because then it makes me push things as hard as I used to,
Sure.
And my mom's watching and my wife's watching, and I pop up 20 plus feet in the air and I got 15 pounds of lead on, and I'm going for a stand up, and they're watching and going, oh my Jesus, like, please don't blow your leg up right now. And I'm just sitting there, I'm not even in that moment. I'm just thinking like, stand the shit up so you don't lose.
I mean, that's gotta be such a mental game too, because you're not just thinking about yourself, you're having to take your wife and your mom and the whole family into consideration. Obviously you can't do that 20 feet up trying to hit the box, but throughout the competition, that's a lot of pressure too.
Yeah, there's a lot in the back of my head, more than there used to be for sure. I just turned 40 in September, and it's just been a real trip, like growing older and like starting to to appreciate different things in life than maybe you once didn't because you're running around too quickly.
Sure.
Who knows? But yeah, I mean, like that's the mental side of making sure that I'm like I'm doing everything I can do to be the best I can be, but still at the same time be there for my family. It's definitely draining for competition, just like most people who compete in any events. You know, they've got a lot on their shoulders. It's just a little different when you've already been injured and people just want you to do really well, but at the same time they know what you used to do and they just don't want you to hurt yourself trying to achieve that same level of competitiveness.
Sure.
I think that was the hardest part for my mom, was watching me push as hard as I can push, which is an amazing thing to see, but also it has to be a little bit scary, I'm sure.
Oh, it has to be. It absolutely has to be. Now, was there a point in the competition when you were like, fuck, I've got a shot at taking this? Or was it, I'm just going to get through this and we'll see where the score lies at the end?
Yeah, it was actually after the accuracy competition that I felt my best, because in my eyes, it's so weird how the nationals played out, because in my eyes, my distance is my best, but I blew it in a distance event this year. And then my accuracy was the one that I was worried about the most because of my ankle, and I ended up placing second in that. Speed was a big problem because of the mutant harnesses, and these guys are just laying down some really sick speed times, even into a slight headwind. I watched some 2.1 somethings into a headwind that were hitting 2.8s. And it was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, this doesn't make any sense,
Right.
But it's pretty neat to watch. And I hope in the future, I need to talk to some sponsors and some other people and see where that goes. But, I'd like to be flying one of these Mutant or Infinity harnesses, or one of these other companies that are making one of these, as well. It's just a matter of getting my hands on one and then putting the time in, any of these other pilots who've been putting 3-4 years in on these things, and now they're scoring good runs. It took some practice, and, as in any good venue or sport athlete, you almost have to take a step backwards to take 2 forward sometimes.
Sure.
So, that just seems like the route to go for the future on some of these venues. But in the meantime, I've got to maximize whatever the fuck I can do to get smaller in my body position so I can fly further and faster, because I don't have one of these harnesses, and these guys are killing it. It's kind of scary and I was worried about that going into nationals. So, so speed, they kicked my butt. I stayed up in there, not too bad off. I think I 5th overall in speed. And then accuracy the next day, I was in first until my teammate Scott did his re-jump, and then he scored his next like 91 or 100. So he had better scores than me. And then distance was a shamble, man. I'm flying a 58, and I need to set up smooth and deep and just like touch the water lightly. And I'm tight and aggressive, and I'm tighter than I've been in any practice jump, in any comp jump, anything in the last month. And I had to let it dive like all the way to the water and then like re-riser it out. And man, it was tail fluttering through the corner. I drug the whole accuracy course with my left knee and my right leg just to like keep from spitting off the water.
Sure.
and then ended up going like to me, what seems like a pitiful 120 something meters. And I'm like, wow, okay. Wake up call. What the heck's happening right now? And then, second jump didn't go much better. Still charged the gate too hard. Third jump was awesome. I was tied with Kurt almost by like 2 points. This is where like accuracy, I was ahead by like 15 points or something. And by the end and I thought I would just walk away with this thing. By the third round of distance, I'm less than 2 points ahead because of my shitty distance rounds. And then, so Kurt went, and I had him go in front of me. I'd been going first the whole comp, but I wanted him to go first. And then I followed him in, and I saw where he landed based off of some strategy that I figured out. And I pushed about like maybe a half a foot or a foot past where he landed. So wow. I barely took him on that round, which ended up in second in distance, which is fine because I only cared about overalls.
Sure.
And then I ended up winning by like 2.5 points or something like that. Something ridiculous.
I mean,
So
all
it
in
was
all, a
close.
hell
You know,
of a
it was one of those-
competition.
Yeah. Yeah. It
It
was
was
awesome.
no,
So
it
that
really
was unreal. So,
following it as a fan, and as a spectator, and watching the scores, especially not being there and having to see them when they're posted and going, oh fuck, you know. So it was really cool to watch the whole thing happening. But I mean, you must have been. You're standing up on the podium and you've made it. You've succeeded where only a couple of years ago walking straight was in question. That's got to feel pretty damn good.
yeah, that was a huge thing for me. That was you know, and the bigger stat on that, like that was my 6th national title, and I almost have as many world titles as I have national titles, because for me the nationals, like I was saying, is so intimidating sometimes, and it's anyone's game. You know, like Tommy Delbeck's year and Kurt's and mine and whoever else has won, Bobo, and you know, you start adding up all these champion wins, and I mean. So I've been competing in 2007 to 2021. I missed like 3 or 4 of them, you know. So I mean, when you come down to it, like it's shooting like 50% on the stats for national titles, and that's hard because it's a really difficult competition. If your overall goal, like this year, counted for the DIPC, accounted for the World Championships of freestyle, accounted for the World Championships in regular events, it counted for as well as the World Games.
Wow.
Well, this didn't count for that, but you know, like, so there's like 3 world events on one national event, you know, and then, you know, you never know the other pressure we've seen before, where one year's national counts for multiple years teams based off of the fact that maybe COVID or whatever else happened. We've seen it multiple times where, you know, Jonathan Tagle lost two years of world teams because he performed badly at one, because they used the same results for 2 different years.
Right.
It's just you know, one of the world's best athletes in swooping, you know, in my eyes, you know, like watching people who should be at these venues, not at these venues. It's a real eye opener. And I personally have put myself in that position in 2016 by not making the team when I clearly should have, if I would have just run 9 rounds, you know, but you want to win too. You don't just want to run 9 rounds.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now
there's that champion mentality that won't go away.
For the upcoming swoopers, the guys that are watching competitions like this, maybe don't know the background of a lot of the guys, but they know that this is something they want to do. Having run the gambit from literally, you know, kind of having that Midas touch and everything is just turning up gold for you, to fuck, I don't know if I can do this anymore. What's the advice you give to guys that have kind of singled in on this? This is what they want to do. This is the route they want to go, but they're, you know, I mean, what should their mentality be? What should they be thinking?
You know, do it for the right reasons. Make sure it's what you want for yourself. I mean, there's fame and glory, but it lasts about 5 minutes on the podium, and it's for a medal that was made, you know, for the tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars you spend to do it. So make sure you're doing it for yourself, and you'll find what you're looking for, you know. What it really takes, 100%, just go out there and just practice things until you keep failing. And once you start failing, that's when you start learning. So just keep going. If it's 65 or 100 accuracy jumps in a row to figure out how to do accuracy, then you got to keep pushing through and do that. You know, sometimes the monotonous tasks of just repetition, unfortunately, is what teaches us to do it right in those moments when you're like, how do I do this? It's not really something I'm not really, deciding how I'm going to fly my canopy in accuracy. I'm reacting to how my sight picture and my senses are taking in what's happening. And then my training is what comes through in those moments when I'm deciding how many toggles, how I lean forward or back, or installing it and standing it up. That's all just a reaction to the training, you know, training the sight picture to react properly instead of improperly.
Well, and I mean,
just practice it up, man.
To put it bluntly, it's your training and the repetition of what can sometimes be the boring stuff is not only the reason that you kept getting podiums, but it's the reason you're alive. I mean, that's the bottom line, is your reactions and all that training kept you with just the injuries you have, instead of just being a stain on the side of the pond, which is that's the best advice I could possibly imagine. Do it because it could save your ass.
And that's true, man. And like everybody's like, and I get it, dude. Everybody's like, I don't want to pop up in accuracy. I'm afraid of hurting myself. Like I hear it all the time. You can totally hurt yourself. You're right. But if I hadn't done, like you were talking about, if I hadn't been training those pop up and stall ins like Kurt and I had done since the early 2010 era, when we first started doing these types of accuracy lanes, if we hadn't practiced that so much, then maybe I wouldn't have flown the 64 that I fly in accuracy into the ground during this accident as well as I did.
Sure.
The same parachute I use, what
Sure.
I mean? It does make sense to me. And it's about controlling your wing and understanding we're not crashing in when we pop up 25 feet in the air. We're actually landing softer than most people are when they're landing from like 5 feet in the air.
Sure.
It's just based off how we use our parachutes.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, man, that saved my life. That did it twice in Dubai when I collapsed the Little Cloud 16 meter on the mountains when I was soaring. I turned in towards a mountain and put the wing through the middle of the nose, and then it was going in real fast from like 30 or 40 feet up. I remember like flying this stall into this stand up on this cliff edge, and then they broke my right ankle, and then I fell off that little edge and then dropped another 15 feet. And the same canopy that, the ledge that I broke my ankle on, the canopy got hung up on, and that saved me from going off the next few ledges. And that was insane. But that was when we used to always, everybody used to speed fly and paraglide out there, but I didn't know what I was doing, man. I'm not a speed flyer paraglider. I've speed flown a lot of parachutes, but never like a crossover wing or partial paraglider. That was a little in above my head, and I flew it like I shouldn't have flown it. So,
sure.
Woofo issues. But yeah, man, that kind of stuff saves your life. Like all the little things that you think, like everything adds up. Maybe things happen for a reason, stuff like that.
Yeah, man.
Because everything adds up to that moment. And I'm not sure why that moment happened. Who knows? But maybe something worse was supposed to happen if I kept it from happening. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, with a situation like that, I don't know that necessarily you have to put meaning into the moment that it happened. It's about putting meaning into the moments that follow.
Yeah, man. And that's just a lot of hard work.
Sure.
A lot of rehabilitation, a lot of pushing hard, get your muscle groups back. Don't leave any muscle groups out. You got to get your whole range of motion back on that ankle.
Sure.
Whatever is broken needs to be taken care of as much as possible. And then, and then the mental side of it, like you were saying, like it's what can your body physically do is one thing, but how much can you mentally push through it is another thing.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll have implications later. Maybe going really hard on it isn't the best for the ankle because it's got a bunch of scar tissue in it. But
sure.
In the meantime, I'm enjoying myself, and I'm looking forward to the next competitions. And whether I win or lose, it's about a growing experience for myself and see how hard I can push myself again. It really makes me happy.
That's fucking awesome. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is you got to make yourself happy and pursue what you want. Now, how do people get a hold of you if they want to come take a canopy course with you and they want to hear about this shit firsthand? How do they follow the competitions that you got coming up? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm actually, you can contact me at nick.batch@gmail.com for any of my canopy courses. It's just my name with a period between it at Gmail.
Cool.
And I also am open to any suggestions anybody has on my Facebook pages. I have a group that I put together for all my coaching courses online. And then if you want to be a part of that, just Facebook message me under Nicholas Batch or Nick James Batch on my sports athlete page, and I'll include you in the group. And that way you can get messaged in on all the different events and coaching gigs I'm providing around the Nate. So,
dude, that's
and hopefully we're
awesome.
going to be international here soon. I'm trying to figure out how to fly there right now.
Fucking awesome.
So the GIPC is happening.
The first round will definitely be on me.
Yeah, we'll be hanging out hopefully pretty soon. So I don't know. I'm probably I got to look up some flights today and see what I have from JFK on over to there. So
awesome, man.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Nick,
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, man, I cannot thank you for taking the time to tell the story, because this I really wanted people to hear. I'm going to release this one pretty much right away, because obviously I want to hit while the iron's hot. Nationals just happened. People are still super excited about it. And I want them to hear the story, because it's not just about the guy that, that won the medal. There's a big story behind this one. So again, man, I can't thank you enough. Yeah,
no, I really appreciate it. It's really a pleasure to be a part of just being able to share what I've gone through personally and where I've gone. It's an interesting story, and I'm not a real social media type person, so it's good to be able to share it somewhere where you get to tell the whole story, verbally instead of just in text. So it's
sure.
Great. Thank you, man.
Well, and I think there's a lot of valuable lessons for people to learn. So again, I think it's fantastic, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess I'll talk to you soon, and we'll hang out and have a drink.
All right. Take it easy, man. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available. Hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.